All right, let's talk about something that's literally the engine of our entire economy: risk. It's the invisible force that drives everything, from a startup getting its first check to the crazy swings of the stock market. But what is it really? And how does it shape, well, everything? Let's get into it.
So let's just kick things off with this big question. When you think about our economy, do you see risk as a problem? A bug in the system that we should try to eliminate? Or is it actually a core feature, the very thing that makes the whole machine go? I have a feeling your answer might just change by the time we're done here.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to nail down what risk actually is in the world of economics. Then we'll dive into our own heads and see how psychology messes with how we handle it. After that, we'll look at the actual toolkit people use to try and tame it. We'll map out all the different kinds of risk out there. And finally, we'll look at what's really at stake, the ultimate gamble.
Okay, let's dive right in with a pretty huge idea. In a capitalist system, risk isn't just something to be afraid of. It's the actual raw material. It's the clay from which opportunity is molded. And this is where we have to totally rewire our brains. See, risk isn't just a hazard. It's an economic commodity. Think about that for a second. It's something that can be bought, sold, and traded. It can be priced, transferred to someone else, and used as a tool, a strategy to make money. It's not a bug, it's a product. And this brings us to the fundamental law of this universe, the risk-return trade-off. It's so simple, but it explains everything. If you want a shot at big rewards, you absolutely have to accept more risk, more volatility, a higher chance of losing. But if you try to get rid of all the risk, you also get rid of any real chance for growth. It's a package deal. No guts, no glory. Okay, but here's the thing. This isn't all just cold, hard math and spreadsheets. It's deeply, deeply human. The way we feel about uncertainty, that's just as important, if not more so, than the numbers themselves. And we basically see two sides of the same coin here. On one side, you've got risk appetite. That's your hunger for growth. It's about how much uncertainty you're willing to stomach to chase a big goal. Then you've got risk aversion. That's the little voice in your head that says, hey, I'd rather take a sure thing, even if it's a smaller prize. It's the difference between someone who invests in a hot new tech startup versus someone who buys government bonds. And then there's this third, super important piece of the puzzle: tolerance. Now, this is different from appetite. Appetite is what you want to do. Tolerance is what you can actually survive. It's your resilience. It's about whether you can take a massive hit to your portfolio and still be standing. Because let me tell you, if your appetite is huge but your tolerance is tiny, you're not investing. You're just gambling.
So, if risk is this thing we can trade, and our brains are all weird about how we approach it, what do people actually do? How do you handle it? Well, that brings us to the toolkit, the real-world strategies people use to try and tame all this crazy uncertainty.
The pros don't just wing it. It's a real process, and it's a cycle that never stops. First, you have to actually identify the risks. What could go wrong? Then, you try to quantify them. How bad could it be? Put a number on it. Next, you mitigate. You use specific strategies to lessen the blow. And finally, and this is key, you monitor. You watch them constantly, because the world is always changing and so are the risks.
One of the most famous tools for mitigation is diversification. We've all heard it a million times: don't put all your eggs in one basket. And this is the fancy explanation for why. By spreading your money across a bunch of different things that don't all move up or down together, you protect yourself from something called idiosyncratic risk. That's just the risk of one single company or industry having a really bad day. Another major tool is hedging. Now, the absolute best way to think about hedging is to think of it like buying insurance. You use one financial product to protect yourself against a bad outcome in another. Sure, it costs you a little money up front. That's the premium, but it can save you from a catastrophic loss. You're basically turning a giant, terrifying, unknown risk into a small, known, manageable cost.
So, we've got our tools for managing risk. But what exactly are we managing? See, risk isn't just one thing. It's a whole universe of different potential problems. Let's try to map out some of the main flavors of danger out there.
And this right here, this simple idea, is the key to everything. Not all risks are created equal. You can't fight a hurricane with the same tools you'd use to fix a leaky faucet. Understanding exactly what kind of risk you're up against is the most critical first step.
So take a look at this landscape. You've got systematic risk. That's the big stuff, like a global recession that hits everybody. You can't diversify that away. Then there's operational risk. This one's internal.
a key piece of machinery breaks, or someone makes a huge mistake. Credit risk is pretty simple. It's the chance that someone who owes you money just doesn't pay you back. Liquidity risk is sneaky. It's when you own something valuable, but you can't sell it quickly when you need the cash. Inflation risk is the silent killer, just slowly making your money worth less and less every single year. And then you have external risks, the true wild cards, things like natural disasters, pandemics, or major wars.
And all of this brings us to the bottom line. After all the strategies, all the analysis, all the psychology, it all comes down to a final gamble. And there are really only two possible fates. Let's start with the dark side. It's a terrifying mathematical concept called gambler's ruin. And it's basically a law of nature. If you keep making big bets that are stacked against you, bets where you're more likely to lose than win, it is a statistical certainty that you will eventually, inevitably, go broke. Game over.
So there they are, the two fates. On one hand, you have gambler's ruin, where a series of bad, poorly managed risks compound until you're wiped out. But on the other hand, you have risk yield, and that's the prize. That's the reward you get for taking on smart, calculated, well-managed risks. It's the extra return you earn for being brave, but not stupid, in the face of uncertainty.
And this quote just perfectly captures the paradox at the heart of all this. It's a huge reminder that trying to be perfectly safe isn't safe at all. If you just hide your money, shelter it from every possible risk, you might feel safe, but you're not. Inflation will quietly eat it alive, and you'll find that you're actually getting poorer over time. And so we come full circle. Risk isn't just a feature of our economy, it's the fuel. It's the source of ruin for sure, but it's also the only source of real growth. Which leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question. In a system that's literally built on taking chances, is playing it safe the biggest, most certain gamble you can possibly make?